It's been over a quarter of a year since we talked about metacurrency, so today we're going to be talking about something that is frequently brought up, but rarely ever properly addressed. But let's get this thing set up real fast. Gameplay loops! Well, sort of. The title here isn't entirely correct, but more on that later. A gameplay loop or compulsion loop is a habitual chain of actions that reward a player for performing an action. You frequently hear about it in Video. Skyrim has you complete quests, fight monsters, and get a reward. RimWorld has you build up a colony to get more items to survive a threat to the colony to build up a colony. In Dwarf Romantic, you play tiles to get more tiles, to place those tiles even more to increase a score. You see how things work here. Do X to do Y to get to Z. A cycle, a loop if you will. TTRPGs, no matter what some of them would like to say, are not video games. I like to call it a very simple idea of you cannot go left, which is to say a video is restrictive by design. I can't recruit teammates not available. I can't throw a civilian a gun and say run like hell. I can't say something if it's not programmed into the game. A loop in these games can be carefully designed within those parameters, and many of them are good. Some of them are very bad though, but TTRPGs allow you to go left, aggressively so. Oftentimes the right question, erratic behavior, or worse, can lead to more memorable moments than anything. So how do you design a loop around that? A player can do whatever they want. This is madness. But recall that point at the start. We're not forming a loop, because every group has a loop naturally formed by just playing together. But what we're actually talking about today is a game's focus, as it changes a fundamental aspect about how a game is played and how players will engage with it. Every game's got a focus, and that focus is what keeps things moving forward. Let's take a game like Exalted. It's all about building power. This could be purely martial, through relationships, through rulership, but everything builds power, and you get more powers, you complete more objectives to build your power more. But let's compare that to Riddle of Steel. It's also about building power, mostly martial prowess, but it's effectively the same thing. Their focus, though, is completely different. Exalted is about high-flying demigods whose blades cut through armies and confront horrible threats, but the entire game focused on the constant series of escalation to build themselves up and their ambitions. In Riddle of Steel, you advance by following your ambitions. Battle is a sword swing away from death, but a little bit of clever thinking and dangerous maneuvers, and you might eke out a win. Both have the same loop at the end of the day. Discover a quest, battle a threat, advance. But the focus of them are very, very different. So let's take an example game, because I like examples, just an idea, and shift the focus around. How quickly a small little change can not only change the perception, but also design of a game. We'll make Cadavers and Cavaliers a D20 plus modifiers role-playing game about brave knights confronting the undead plaguing their world, but let's shift that focus just a bit. Cadavers and Cavaliers, focused in on combat, is pretty simple. You're the metaphorical hammer against the anvil of civilization. The undead threat is so great that you'll need to carve your way through hordes of skeletons, zombies, and ghouls to tear off a head of a necromancer, controlling just that little bit of it. By yourselves, you're a formidable force of nature. Heavy armor and fine steel has crafted you all into ideal undead slaying machines. You don't roll to hit enemies, you roll to damage the horde, using techniques to bash the unending tide back for a moment, or burn away precious time and blood to carve a path through them. The undead are a wave, forcing the knights to fight their way through corridors and labyrinths, trying to leverage their own few numbers against an overwhelming enemy. Battle is attrition-based. Every turn, armor, fatigue, and even morale begins to dwindle and dim as the knights cleave through abomination after abomination. The focus is squarely on combat's bloody nature, each knight being more of an idealized killing machine than a man with goals or ambitions. Those have been left behind, lost to screams of those who have died, and now the only thing that remains is the grindhouse horror show before you. Yeah, there will be a Freebird solo moment as individuals knights leap into action, risking life and limb to secure a win, because that's the point. However, Cadavers and Cavaliers focused on those knights changed quite a bit. Now it's about chivalry and gallant heroics mixed with the dread opposition of the undead. No more are unfilling killing machines, your knight errants gallivanting around the countryside, righting wrongs and trying to convince the local elf lord that he should help the peasants, because you'll definitely slay the lich that's chilling in his backyard. The game takes a rather dramatic shift toward promises of glorious rewards as your power and influence grows as your deeds do. Killing 100 undead doesn't really mean anything, but saving Princess Ladyperson from the dread necromancer irredeemable Monstronomus is gonna net you some big bucks on your next heroic legacy of knightly ingenuity awards, and you'll need it. Those orders of knights are always hunting for new prospects, and being scouted by any of them is an honor, and honor is what fuels your knightly fairy tale quest. Will you adopt the mantle of the Raven Order, black-clad knights with moonlit silver swords, whose brooding is only mixed by their hatred of the wicked liches of this waking world? Or perhaps you'll swear a holy oath to the Knights of the Blazing Dawn, an inspirational force of nature, riding and inspiring the people that the dawn will always arrive in the darkest hour by impaling a goddamn ghost dragon with a flaming lance. The game's focus and desires have changed. Attrition and grindhouse action is gone, now replaced with fairy tale stories of knights battling death itself. The dice hit the table based on heroic virtues and noblesse oblige, rather than how many corpses you can make in a single swing. And of course, finally, Cadavers and Cavaliers, the survival horror game about knights in the loosest sense of the word. The world is an undead apocalypse, your walls keep them out, but desperation forces newly recruited knights of the realm to venture beyond the walls to gather what little supplies they can to supplement a starving and rather morally compromised people. This is the most traditional game out there, actually. Go out, gather supplies and whatever you can, and hightail it out of there. But now every village is a dungeon worth delving into, every ounce of food worth rationing, and every rest another day closer to the wave of death approaching. Battles are hectic and fast. One good hit and your brave, disposable hero is now fine-paced, or much, much worse. But the dead don't care. They come in droves. Zombies that shamble haphazardly before breaking out into a full sprint toward you. Skeletal legionnaires scouting for whatever kill they can find. Devilish ghouls waiting in the shadows to drag an unsuspecting knight into a rather grim demise. The emphasis here is on the smash and grab aspect of looting, grabbing and hauling ass. You don't level up by slaying a dozen skeletons. You get better by bringing home what your people need. Even jewels and other baubles hold value to someone to pawn off for a shipment of grain. And generally speaking, any victory where you come home is a victory worth celebrating, even if you do lose a few people. So with these three, we've assigned a focus to different facets, and subsequently, that loop has pretty drastically changed. The basic premise is still in place for all three, though. Gather supplies, fight the undead, recover and reward, gather supplies, etc. But putting a harder focus on different aspects of that loop have shifted the idea. Our first blood-soaked variant focused on battling the undead, leading a game of higher octane combat and bloodier engagements with overly competent characters. Our second focused on that recovery and reward, desiring an end state for completing a quest which leads to greater rewards down the line. Finally, we focused on just gathering supplies, which changed combat from something vaguely heroic to downright discouraged, because fuck that. But encouraging us to grab whatever we can and leave the encroaching swarm of ghastly ghouls, even if we have to sacrifice our friend to do so. I hope that the takeaway here was that a gameplay loop is what a person will do to engage with the game, the ABC of playing a session with their friends. That's difficult, if not impossible, to actually control and wrangle. But assigning a focus, assigning that perfect moment to a particular part, detailing, giving the needed attention to it, can drastically shift how that loop is actually played out, how A, B, and C are seen and interacted with by your players and the people running your game. My name is Notepad Anon, and this was My Little Classroom, episode 7. Jesus, we're at 7? If you like what I do here, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And many thanks to the Plutocrats as always for funding my descent into madness. Godspeed, and good luck.